Welcome back to Data Driven Recruiting. My name is Sophia Beck, and I'm joined by my co-host Tigran Sloyan.
Hey, Sophia. So today we're talking about the 3 things to pay attention to when building your candidate pipeline.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic because a lot of recruiters, they worry about how do I make sure that I have a really healthy talent pipeline, because that's a starting point for everything for recruiting, right?
Yeah. But just worrying about it doesn't get you anywhere, right? Knowing what kind of attributes to pay attention to and when you can say that I have a very healthy pipeline versus something needs to change is very important.
Yeah, great.
So number one.
3 things. Number one.
Number one, let's start with channel. I think, where you get your candidates from is one of the most important things to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And, there's 2 distinct categories of channels, right? One is inbound, one is outbound. Okay. There is a bunch of different subcategories that I think people sometimes use as a kind of a separate category, but really it's either candidates are coming to you or you're chasing them, right? It's either one way or the other. So inbound is usually applicants, usually events.
Mm-hmm. So if you they go to apply career fairs, online on, submitting resume on the job description or in the offline event where they hand out the resume.
Yeah, so you went to like a Grace Hopper or a career fair or something like that. They dropped a resume. It's basically an inbound. They came to you, even though you went halfway, got close to them, but at the end of the day, they came to you. Mm-hmm. Or, as you said, like apply through your basically application portal.
Job description.
And when it comes to outbound, there is a lot under outbound, right? Mm-hmm. So everything from cold sourcing, maybe you have like a list of emails, or you're cold sourcing through LinkedIn, for example, or even marketplaces, right? A lot of the times people could categorize marketplace as something like in between, because candidates came halfway, said like we're interested in a job, and then you went there, found them, reached out. But really, you're still chasing them. They don't know anything about you until you actually reached out, so that's still an outbound.
You need to still sell and the idea of this job opportunity to them. Exactly. Yeah, or I guess the agencies like headhunters and...
Agencies, and actually those are almost like inbound, right? Like agencies, because usually agencies would pitch the candidate about the role and about what it is, and they will just send you a resume of somebody who's already interested in you. So I think agencies in some sense could be categorized as more of an inbound. Referrals, however, do categorize as an outbound, because even though somebody might know someone else that they want to recruit to the company, you still have to go chase, convince them that like this is something that's worth their time.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think when it comes to channels, like being very clear about which channels have worked with you for you before. If you're a larger organization, there's usually a lot of data around which channels have we found most success with, because it matters, right? Different organizations have success with different types of channels, depending on your size, whether you're like highly mission-driven company, whether you have a lot of money and you pay really well, right? I think all of those things influence which channels are going to work really well for you versus which ones are not.
Yeah, and I guess kind of 2 points to attack that part, right? I guess the first one is like knowing what works best and then doubling down on that one. And then I guess the second one is what are some of the channels that are underutilized compared to the industry, and how can I actually tap into those so that you can unlock the potential of those channels?
And beat the market, right? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, recruiting is all about recruiting better than your competition. So if you cannot find an angle that hasn't been oversaturated yet, you're still going to be on the losing end of things.
Yeah. So for example, I guess if you have a lot of inbound candidates, but let's say the industry's rejection rate from the very first resume screening is like 80%, 90%. If you can even make that channel work better for you, that's an instant boost to your pipeline.
Exactly. You can tap into places where others aren't looking, and that's like a huge competitive strategy. But also for each channel, I guess, to spend a little bit more time talking about the other 2 metrics, for each channel there is 2 more metrics to like pay attention to. And one of them is volume, which I think we talked about a little bit, and the other one is quality. So let's dive into volume and quality, right? Like why are those important? I guess volume is obvious, right? So like if you have a channel that you're getting 1 candidate per month, you're probably maintaining that channel, right? We've seen this a lot with like headhunting firms where they want a lot of attention, but they send you one candidate a month.
Right.
That means like the time that you spend maintaining that channel or even thinking about that channel might not be worth the investment if
Right.
you're getting like a very, very, very
So return on investment, your effort to managing that channel versus how much you can get out.
Exactly. I guess other things to point out about volume, I think it's super important because recruiting has so much randomness to it. Everything from like candidates just randomly dropping off to them deciding to move to a different city to compensation not working out. So many things could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So unless you actually can bring in a very high volume, especially if you're doing high volume recruiting,
Right.
in the sense that like you want to hire a lot of people, if you don't have a high volume, in some
Right.
sense it's similar to sales. Every salesperson knows that unless you have a lot of opportunities coming through the door, a lot of leads, you're never going to close anything.
Right. So it's a numbers game, so to say.
At the end of the day, it's numbers game. It's kind of unfortunate because there is so much randomness to it. I think the more data comes into recruiting, the more structured it becomes, the more predictable it will become, and it wouldn't be a numbers game. But I think today is definitely a numbers game. So volume, definitely like a key attribute when building the pipeline.
And I guess if you already have the number of roles that you're trying to fill, and as well as just the overall your applicant to hire rate, then you can also kind of back out like how many people do I need to get into the door even to be able to satisfy that number that you're trying to reach.
Like
right?
basically working backwards to say where am I, where do I need to be.
Right.
And then of course last but not least is quality, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're getting a bunch of candidates from all of these different channels, but then they are all
high volume.
high volume, but no one actually makes it through. You're just spinning your wheels and you're not getting anything out from the other side.
Yeah.
And usually quality tends to be differently distributed depending on which channel you're looking at. And it's always a difficult balance between quality versus volume, because obviously very high quality very high volume usually tends to bring in lower quality.
A lot of noise comes with the signal. Okay.
Exactly. So like being able to clearly separate, quality from your high volume channels, as well as making sure that at least your low volume channels have quality. Because if you have low volume channel and it also low quality, then it's a complete no-go. It's just a waste of your time.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways to see like the quality of your candidates for channel? Like how do I identify, what are some of the things that I can use to measure the quality?
Starting from initial conversion to all the way down to like a on-site to hire ratio to even like offer acceptance ratio, all of that feeds into the quality. And then of course there's different ways to measuring quality. Once you know what attributes you're looking at, like you have to clearly understand what are the main things you're looking for. And once you know what are the things you're looking for, you can actually go ahead and assess for those qualities and then back down to your channels and see which of those channels are producing the quality that you expect.
Got it. Well, thank you for your insights and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.